I hope you will be able to pick up some helpful hints for working the polls, and you all need to work the polls, right? And it will, what we're talking about hopefully will help you in that process. Before we get started, this is Linda Boychel. Linda has worked the polls for many, many years in the county as well as in the city. So she knows how it works both places. But Linda, would you lead us in a prayer, please?
Yes. Let's bow. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this time together. And please open our minds and hearts to your message. But more importantly, right now, please help us understand this process and help us when we do work in the polls on election day to do the best of our ability for your glory. Please take care of our troops wherever they may be serving. They do a great job for us. Help us through this election. I know it's a tough one. May your will be done. Give you the praise and the glory and the thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen.
Would you please stand and we do the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I have a few announcements first. Board of Elections is still looking for poll workers, so we have sign-up cards in the back. We want to encourage everyone to participate in other campaign activities like phone banking or going door to door. We have information in the back about that as well. One of the companies or one of the organizations that is doing a lot of that in providing the tools is Political Gravity. Political Gravity has picked 2 places in St. Louis County that they will support. One of them is the St. Louis Tea Party and one of them is Missouri Precinct Project. So we can get you on to Political Gravity. You get your walk lists. You can make phone calls from home. You don't even have to go outside. And Political Gravity was formed by American Majority. That's another grassroots organization nationwide. And one of the guys that has been very involved in developing Political Gravity is Raz Schaefer. Raz Schaefer will be in St. Louis next week at the after party. So you might want to go there and listen to him. He can give you all the insights about Political Gravity.
Frida,
It's on the 18th.
at PO's in St. Charles.
Right. Did everybody hear that? We have sign-up sheets at the back to get voter guides. If you're interested, you might want to sign up. That will tell you, first of all, you can get voter guides to give to your friends or to educate yourself. Also in the back is info on Prop A, application for absentee ballots, voter registration cards, and one more thing. We want everybody to take the challenge to pick 2 people, make sure they're registered to vote, and take them to the polls all the way through. Registration ends October 10. So we have a few more days left. It's next Wednesday. Okay? Find 2 people that are not registered, sign them up, and then make sure they go to the polls. Take them if you have to. Yes, Anna?
On registration deadlines, is that the date by which they have to be postmarked or received by the election authority?
Postmarked.
Postmarked, okay.
Can they still go and register live at their county
Of course.
up until like the day of election or something, did I read?
I don't
Not that
think so.
close.
Only if you live in North County.
Well,
They're not
technically,
gonna
it
forget
is,
that.
you have to get judge court order
Okay,
Right.
registration.
okay.
Is what it is. But you should have a reason, like you forgot that you moved and you didn't update your voter registration, so.
Or you went to the
Doing
movies that
that.
day, you couldn't
Or,
go.
yeah,
Yeah.
or you just moved in from another state, I mean, and you were registered to vote in the other state, you know, there are different.
But
Can
that
you
wouldn't
vote
apply
this-
before the 10th, though. The 10th, you can just go.
Right,
Oh,
right.
so after the 10th.
This is
then-
after
the
the 10th,
10th.
I'm talking from after that date until
Gotta
the
be a-
date of.
Can you
election.
vote this provisional ballot?
Yeah, you can, but, and then it's up to the board
Right.
to actually determine whether or not you're a valid registered.
And as long as you're in the county before the election, you can just follow the affidavit the day of, and that should be good.
Right, exactly. If you were on the registry, but you moved, then you take some time.
By the way, we have lots of handout information in the back about elections, about candidates, about voting. Help yourself at the end of the show.
Can I make one other point?
Sure.
If you do take and walk with any of our candidates and you're going door to door, jot down on your walk list, if you get a chance to talk to that voter, what their persuasion is, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever,
Right.
because we still need all of that
Right,
information.
that's very useful
to build our
information.
databases.
And if you go walking now, I think until about the last week before the election, they then take that data and call those people.
Right.
Because you help them identify who's a Republican versus Democrat, and then the Republicans all get phone calls, okay? Or independents. So let's get started. Like I said, Linda is here to help us. Both of us are gonna talk about this, and she has done poll working for a much longer time than I have. In my opinion, poll working is the first line of defense against voter fraud. If you go into the polls, the poll worker at the front of the lines will give you a ticket, a little square ticket. They ask the voter to print his or her name and instructs the voter to take their voter ticket and their identification. Work area 2. Acceptable forms of ID, I'm just gonna run through them. If the address does not match the address in the precinct roster, you have to have a driver's license or state identification issued by any state, identification issued by the state, identification issued by any U.S. agency, identification used by a university, college, trade, or technical school, or be personally known to both the Democrat and the Republican, the bipartisan team. If the address matches the following documents can be used if it matches the address in the precinct roster, which is a utility bill, a bank statement, or other such things like I have listed. Okay? Now, what can go wrong here? The poll worker doesn't understand the rules and allows a voter without proper documentation to move to the next work area. And if the poll worker says, oh, there's something wrong, it says, this isn't right. Don't listen to the fact when somebody says, this is the way we've always done it. Understand the rules and stand your ground. Linda has a good example of that. She walked into a polling place. Where-
Which time?
You were telling me that you took over the supervisory position.
Well, yeah. That was in Kenlock.
The lady was surprised. She always,
Right, well, no, I have to go back a little bit. I worked for the County Board of Elections full-time inside the County Board of Elections. I recruited, placed, and trained the poll workers that work in our county for about a year and a half, back in 2001, 2002. No, 2002, 2000, somewhere in there. It was after the 2000 debacle we had. So, and we had talent on the ballot. That was our main concern. He was running for the Senate. And anyway, I was amazed when I gave the training classes how many people had worked for years and came up to me after my class and said, I never knew that's why we did this. I've been sitting through these training classes and they never explained the process, the reasoning behind. The people at the election board did when I taught class, because instead of the 2 hours, it took me about 2.5 hours, because people would question, oh, I never heard that. And it was like, if people understand, this is the law. You know, we don't do this just to do it. We're doing it because this is actual Missouri law. There is a process, there is a method to our madness by what we do. And so I had a couple of people that I could hear said, no, we always did it this other way, you know, it's always been fine. So we had an election. I was going back to my normal life, which is a realtor. And so I let them place me in my worst polling place, which was in Kinloch. We also had a mayoral election going on there. And we had, from one of the sides, they had asked that we really watch who we put in that polling place, because there was a lot of infighting on the Democrat side. And so I said, well, I tell you what, just let me be a poll worker. I won't even be the supervisor. Just let me work as a poll worker in there. And I had had complaints from previous people that I placed in there that they were literally threatened that you go along. You know, our signature is our safeguard. You are supposed to have a bipartisan team that looks at the signature that's on their form of identification, other than your, you know, your government. But then you're doing an affidavit. They're actually signing a legal document saying that they are not lying. This is to the best of my ability. I am this person. That's the reason why we do that. But everything else is supposed to have a signature. I noticed, though, that they've taken that out of our county stuff, which kind of concerns me. Did you notice? Years ago, we always said you had to look at the signature, because when we work in the election board and we have petitions come in, your signature is what we're verifying on those petitions. Okay? You know, how everybody comes up, will you sign my petition, we got to raise all. We are literally pulling up signatures that we have on file for you, and we're comparing them to the signatures on those petitions. That's also important when we vote. You're supposed to be looking at their form of identification, the signature that is on that, and comparing it with what they sign, the book. That's why we're supposed to have a bipartisan team look at that and you initial. That's the reason why you're doing that. I don't know why, and I have questioned that, and I have not gotten an answer back why they changed that in the county book, because that is important. So anyway, I show up that morning, and they're all doing their little thing, and I come walking in, and she looked and went, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm working here today. And she went, oh. So we had a nice, fair, honest election that. So that's one of my little things. I've seen lots of things.
Linda, what do you do when you notice something that is not right and you bring it up and the person says, oh, that's the way we've always done it? How?
Get your book. Your book has the processes in it, and that is.
This one?
Right. Yeah.
What's that be, a bound book of, all
Also,
Missouri law?
yes, you do. You also have your Missouri law book.
In the
Should
polling
be in
place, they have
all the
these
polling
books.
Oh,
Okay.
right.
Some back there, I see too.
Yeah, I
Right,
was
but
able to
they are
get 3 of
supposed to
them.
be in your polling place. They're in our,
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
right. So.
You need to
yeah.
know what the rules
Need
are,
to-
and
Oh,
then,
yeah.
Right.
don't let them,
Exactly.
don't let them talk you into, this is the way we've always done it.
Right. And
You
if you
insist
still
on it.
have a problem, call the election board.
Right.
Hey, this is going on. That's what us roving deputies.
Or
that's
tell the
what I
roving
do
deputy.
now. Right, and voice your concern, but fight for what you know is right.
Ro- Go ahead.
Because when you know the law, you can shut down.
Yeah.
One voter came in, she was really wanting to know how many people had voted, and we could find out. But I really just want to know, I just want to know, it doesn't matter. Like, and then I started quoting chapter and verse, chapter being the Missouri Revised Statutes, chapter 115. You cannot do this, and this, and then she's like, oh, okay. And then so we're just going like, if you know the laws, you can very quickly stop them from doing that.
Yeah, there was a guy that came in and asked us how many people have voted so
Yeah.
far, and we said, well, we're not allowed to divulge that. Well, they told me at the other polling place
Then
on
they
the
broke
road.
the law.
Well, that's their issue, which I don't believe them.
Smart voters know that the
Yep.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
exactly. It's on the
Yes,
phone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all they have to do.
Yeah.
They have it right there in hand.
But,
Also, I do have to say, if we work in the city, we don't have the little numbers.
Really?
No, they do it a little bit differently. It's set up differently, and that concerns me.
Yeah.
I always ask when I walk into the poll, because I'm a roving deputy. I'm like acting on behalf of the Board of Elections. I always ask them, what number are you at? And I'm curious to see, some of them say, oh, this is it, and others say, no, we can't tell you that.
But you're
Well, and then I explained to them, I have a badge, I said, well, I'm here from the Board of Elections, you can tell me. But that's another check to see if they follow the rules.
Now, my people know me though.
Yeah, by now, a lot of people know me too. But that's some of the things that I'm trying to make people aware of, or that we're trying to make people aware of how to make sure that you follow the rules. You need to understand, when you go through the training, you get the book. Make sure you read this book. They don't go through it very carefully, okay? Read the book and understand what the rules are. And if you want to, you can get this book. Call the Secretary of State and they'll mail it to you. I had mine within 2 days.
We can go online. They have the chapter 115 available to you anytime.
I like it. Burke Area 2 also checks that the voter is in the precinct roster as a registered voter. And there is no reason to vote with affidavit. I have a list of the reasons why you can vote with affidavit. It's in the book. A poll worker from each party must witness the voter's signature in the precinct roster and initial in the proper space. Record the sequence number, record the ballot style, and the correct voting equipment that the person wants to use. You have a choice between electronic and paper. If a voter is not found in the precinct roster, the voter needs to be referred to the problem table. Huh?
The authority hates when you call.
What do you call it? Work
Yeah,
area.
I called the problem table. I just wanted to maybe trying to just don't let people hear you call the problem table.
Now what could go wrong here?
They call it solutions.
Huh?
Solution.
What did you say, Beth?
They called it the solutions table.
Okay.
Implies that the person's in trouble.
Last half food.
So we'll call it the solutions table. The supplemental precinct roster was not transferred. As roving deputies, we leave the Board of Election at 5 and have to deliver the records of people that already voted to each polling place. So they can transfer that into their big precinct binder. If we're late, like we get there at 7 or at 8, somebody that already has voted absentee could potentially come in and vote again because they don't know that this person has already voted. Okay? Now, if they don't have the supplemental roster and they don't have the information, there's nothing you can do about it. You don't know that this person voted already. I don't know how they can be stopped.
Oh, Yeah, but you just identified yourself. Because if you come in and you sign in that book, and then we have a supplemental binder
Later,
that says that person already voted, it's noted, and you just signed your, you know,
You
we
go
have
forward.
in two different places.
so Adam, what would you say the solution is?
What's the solution?
If the supplemental data was not available, when the
And-
first people came in and voted, and somebody voted again that already had voted absentee.
I guess I would just call the board of elections.
But how do you know? Why do you wouldn't even question it?
Why would you
Somebody has to
question?
verify.
You don't know that this
Compare.
person has voted absentee.
Well, I mean, when you receive your supplemental, you know.
And then call the board?
Yeah,
Right,
I guess.
yeah.
I mean,
But what can they do? It's
Well,
a,
that, I know,
You can't-
that
you
the
can't
vote
change
is
it.
already in
Yeah,
there,
exactly.
but that
But then you
person
can go into
just
court
did a
proceedings.
great thing, because we have written proof that they have voted twice,
yeah.
and that's
Right.
against election law, so they can be prosecuted at that point.
Doesn't that person just claim that he wasn't the one who voted the first time? I mean, doesn't he claim that
No,
I
he
was?
doesn't have to claim
Well,
anything.
That's called
The-
criminal offense, but
Yeah,
But
but,
you can't really.
well, exactly, but the thing of it is
that's
if
no
he
reason to
signed
don't
it,
delay
and those
coffee and
signatures,
donuts.
you know,
so it is very important that when the supplemental precinct roster gets to your polling place, that it is transferred to the main book right away.
you understand what that is. The supplemental is, we have to print the books. They probably are printed 2 weeks before the election, because we've got to put all this stuff into the stuff that goes out to the polling place. So from the time of the printing of the binders and the night before the election, you're eligible to vote still by absentee. Go to the Board of Elections and actually cast an absentee ballot, okay? So we have up until, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whenever they close down that night before. So we have to be able to let you guys at the polling place know who has voted by absentee during that period of time. That's what the supplemental binder is. That's why the roving deputies have to get it to you as quickly as possible when you open up. We open the polls at 6 o'clock, that's why we leave at 5 o'clock. We have that stuff. We're supposed to go around and make sure all of them are open and give you that paperwork. So then you guys are armed with the latest, greatest of all who have voted absentee.
Right. So as a, yes, Lynn?
In that hypothetical case you were talking about, if someone did vote twice because that didn't get there, do those votes get discounted then?
Well, what happens probably,
They've already counted. We've already counted our absentee ballots. We take and we open those and we count them in the morning.
You can't, even though you know that same person voted twice, you can't take one away?
well, you can report it to the Board of Elections.
Who's told
The
you?
minute you notice that, you report it, that person can be prosecuted,
Oh, yeah.
okay? If people are willing to do that, the fines for voter fraud, I can't even think of the word, voter fraud, are fines from 2,500 up to 10,000, and from 1 year in prison, jail term up to 10 years, depending on the,
And losing your right to vote.
and using your right to vote. So it's very important that you transfer the supplemental folder into the big books the minute you get them. Yes,
So that's the first thing you do.
right.
So when you say you do that, and you transfer, are you actually just, because the way they described it in class is just a list that goes in the back of the book? And they
Well,
said
we
it's up to the
actually
poll
now note on there, there's a abbreviated thing.
There's all kinds
right
of
in the
codes,
line.
but you need to transfer all that into the precinct roster.
Because, for example, I vote in Glendale, and my husband always absentee votes, so when I go in, I look at his name, because it's right underneath mine, of course, it's always blank, like he didn't vote.
Then
Shouldn't be.
somebody
So
is
they're not
not
doing their
actually
job,
putting
right?
vote by absentee.
Unless they didn't transfer the information from the supplemental roster.
Yeah, and the way in class, they said that sometimes you don't have time, and they just said to stick it in the back of your book. So then, it's up to the poll worker, right, to go
Right.
flip through that second thing.
Fine, if you don't want to transfer it into the book, you check the big book, the supplement, the precinct roster, and then you also check the supplemental
Every
precinct
single
roster.
time.
Huh?
You have to do it every single
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Because,
Right.
because in some instances, there are new names on the supplement that aren't in there. So if you can't find the big book, you look in the small one. But if they're in both, for the example of like the absentee ballot received or sent, then you have to look at them every single time if there's duplication. So you might as well just do your job the first time and not have to worry about it.
Well, when you transfer it though, are you actually writing down in that
Yes.
spot
Yes.
what's
Oh,
on the
yes,
list?
exactly. So it
Okay.
prohibits it.
Okay.
So like if on the supplemental says that we've received their absentee ballot at the election authority,
I see.
on the
Okay.
big book you write essentially the code that says we
Right.
received it, so no one can vote at
Okay.
that place.
I've never been told to do that, so that's good to know, because I've been a poll
Exactly,
worker.
that's how you prevent
Right.
some of the problems.
Well, I think that they actually say that in the training book.
Yes,
Now,
they do,
the-
but
the
I have
person
run,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why my classes took 2 to 2.5 hours long, because I went through every little thing. Because I've had some people, this is the first time they've ever worked. And if they don't know, then they don't know. If you just very lightly go over it, oh, you'll be assigned with people who have worked, well, that's perpetuating a problem.
Right.
If we have a problem in that poll and they say, this is the way we've always done it, well, you're not doing it according to the election law, okay? That's why I want everyone trained with the correct procedure, so that all of them go out there and do it correctly, and we get rid of
yes, ma'am.
Who's responsible for transferring? Is it the supervisor at the site responsible to make sure that supplemental data
It's
gets
who
put in?
they assign.
Oh.
It's who, well, ultimately, the supervisor is always responsible. It's, the highest person on the totem pole, their head rolls better than everybody else.
And I would imagine if you notice that it's not
Right.
being done, raise your hand and say,
Right.
don't we have to do this?
Right,
Okay, don't be shy.
Be my first time.
yeah.
I have walked into, like I said earlier, I'm a roving deputy. That's one of the things I question. Have you transferred the supplemental? And sometimes they say, what? We're supposed to do that?
Yeah.
Yes. And I explain that whole story to them again. And, people need to know this. And also, people need to know, if you didn't have the supplemental, somebody came in and voted, and now you discover, oops, this person shouldn't have been allowed to vote. You must report that, so the Board of Election can follow up. The vote is cast. There's nothing you can do about it. And he's already voted absentee, so the person voted twice, but you must report it. So,
Memo sheet.
huh?
They're on the memo sheet, look at here.
Right, or the problem sheet?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I've got a question. When you come around at a certain time, 6 o'clock, whatever it is, and the door's open, what if someone wants to vote that early, and you haven't had a chance, you just got to vote?
Well, you can look at both files, you look at the precinct roster, and
So you
by
have to
now
do
you
it
do have, the-
Same time that people are voting then?
yeah,
Because if you don't have a dead time that you can do it before people start coming in, then you don't have time to do that.
if you haven't had time to transfer the data into the precinct roster, you just have to check both records.
Or can you do it, ask people, is there's a lull in the voting or something, and hope you catch
You
your
just
time?
you just tell them to
And
hold
hope
on a
you're not
minute,
late for the person that just voted or something?
just tell them to hold on a minute, you have to check the records.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
there's, I thought there was a lull time, but there's not, you just have to work it
You
in.
have to work it in.
Okay,
We've always gotten ours before 7 or before 6 o'clock. I mean, I've never had a problem getting it before we open up the poll.
how
Well,
do they get in to give it to you though?
No, we not. Yeah.
Okay.
I've worked
If
for
it's
a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, because you have somehow it's locked door. How's it-
we also have a cell phone and the number of that polling place, so we can call them.
Oh, okay, that's good. How do you,
Every one place has run something that they hook up to.
okay, that way they get in before people are voting, okay.
Right.
that's it.
The other problem, and I bring this up all the time, the other problem is, this position, checking the precinct roster, is very critical. You have to have a bipartisan team, a Democrat and a Republican. In some cases, they don't have enough Republicans, so you have 2 Democrats at this critical position. That's an invitation for doing things that are somewhat unsavory or not correct. That is why it's so important to have Republicans in the polls. I bring this up all the time. People look at me, why? Well,
Well, we do.
that's the way you prevent voter fraud. Okay, I have a listing here of why you would be voting by affidavit. We don't need to go into all that. The poll workers know this stuff. It's in the books. And that person can vote with an affidavit. A person that fills out a provisional ballot cannot vote. Okay? It's a big difference. Do not give them a ballot to vote. They can fill out a ballot and it gets put in an envelope and put into the ballot box of the OptiScan reader. That's where it stays. Until the Board of Election has time to review those records, those provisional ballots. And if they are valid, then they will count that vote. But if they're not, they don't count. So a person that signs a provisional ballot cannot vote on that day.
Do they, at the very end of the day, enter the machine, or does somebody come in the middle of the day and take anything out?
End of day.
End of day only, okay.
All right, let me make that a little bit clear. We have ballots for provisional voting. They state provisional ballot. They're different than our regular ballots. That's the point that needs to be made. They're allowed to vote in the sense that they're filling out a provisional ballot. It's not being counted until it gets back to the Board of Elections and they can do the investigative process to see if that person was truly a registered voter that should be allowed to cast that ballot. That's the difference.
Plus, my recollection of voting provisionally is that I was able to vote in statewide
Right.
issues, but not local, so.
Right, well, it's.
Statewide and federal,
It's
of course.
federal. Right.
Yes,
Well, that's
federal.
true.
It's the federal, only the federal,
Oh, it
not
is on this one?
statewide. It's different, only
Okay.
federal offices, because provisional voting was a federal law,
I
it's not a state.
So perhaps someone called it something that,
Right.
anyway, okay.
And then do provisional voters have to vote the OptiScan? There's two choices on how you.
They don't vote.
Yes, yeah, it's a optiscan,
So they
because
can't-
it
they
has
can't-
to be written,
The paper
because
ballot.
you're not going to the touch screen, that would automatically count that in our votes that day. It's written, it's separated, it's in that,
Ballot box.
Yellow.
envelope sealed
Right.
and put in a separate area. We don't, after it's sealed in there, we don't do anything with them except for transport them to the election board. The election board, we have 14 days to certify an election. During that 14 days, they will deal with the provisional ballots, doing the verification, was this person supposed to have been able to vote? And if they were, that's why you tear off that portion and you give it to the voter. They can call the election board after a few days to determine whether or not the vote was actually counted.
Well, I don't know if this is, now's the time, but I was going to ask, we each of us knows to vote, and our family and friends, is one voting style more secure than the other? The OptiScan versus.
In my opinion, because I was there when we chose the systems, and working, with the systems, I do the OptiScan. I don't even go to the election board anymore and do, because they don't give you that choice. You do the, touch screen down there when you vote absentee prior to. I don't like it because a lot of times we don't know that tape has been compromised, it's bundled up in the case, and it's not actually, recording it correctly. I have walked into polling places after I received a call from headquarters that were having a problem with their touch screen machine, and the tape has been bundled up, and so we don't know how many voters have gone through, and they voted, and their votes are counted on that flash drive, but we don't have a hard copy to verify. So if it ever goes into a recount, and we have to pull those in order to try to verify, there is no verification. I want something that is concrete, that here's the ballot for me, this is how I voted, and to me, that OptiScan is the best because you have that hard copy.
But we'll talk about that a little later.
So if we're a poll worker, okay, we're supposed to vote ahead of time, and if we don't go down there to vote and vote the,
Just take and you can go online, you can actually print out your request to vote absentee, and they mail you.
And you mail it back.
And you mail it
Is
back,
it?
right.
I think the three today forms in the back page.
Right, or you can, yeah, the ones in the back table. I would make them mail that to you, because then you get the OptiScan one.
so it's safe to send it through the mail? That's-
Yeah, no, well, you don't even have to send it through the mail, in the sense that once you fill it out, you can hand deliver that down to the board of
Oh, I
elections.
can,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
After it's been notarized.
Yes.
No, actually, you can take it down there without it if it's you, because they're an election official, so they're gonna look at your, form of identification, and they're going to certify that they personally, and that's fine, so you don't.
There's a way to work around everything.
Right. Well, and no one's supposed to charge you for notarizing absentee
Same
votes.
thing, Ann.
Right. Yeah, just do
Now, what we just talked about, and somebody brought it up, it takes time to do all that if you're doing it the right way, okay? If you didn't have time, a lot of people come in right in the morning. You didn't have time to transfer things, so you have to check those folders, those records. It all takes time. I have noticed, and this might just be me, the conspiracy theorist, there has been 2 elections, the 2010 midterm and just the last primary, where the systems are down or not as available as they should be. If you cannot verify that something is wrong in the precinct roster or the supplemental, you get on a Palm Pilot, the supervisor gets on the Palm Pilot to verify that this person is in the database. If the Palm Pilot doesn't work, you call the Board of Election to make sure that this is a valid voter that you can give them a ballot to. Well, in those 2 elections, the system was down and it caused a lot of delays. People got very aggravated. People were upset that they had to wait around. I've voted here all the time, why is this a problem? And I don't know if this is by design or what, but why are the systems down in important elections? Or they're not working, so. Don't know, but just be aware, I anticipate that this upcoming election, there's going to be lots of people in the polling places. And if the system is down, it becomes very disruptive. So just keep your cool. Yes.
Are they giving us any additional workers? Well, I know usually it's 8, 4, and 4, but because of the presidential election, are they giving us 5 and 5?
I know in some polling places where they have more than a certain number of people, they will put in more poll workers or more staff.
And then second thing, I always tell people to slow down because they just want to hurry through because their priorities are more to make the person as happy and comfortable and they don't have to wait as long at all. Well, you take your time, you make sure what you're doing is correct. The person may become all aggravated, but they're going to be aggravated by voting correctly.
Right. It's important that this process works smoothly and don't be rushed into, oh, I gotta hurry up, I can't check this. No, you need to do the right thing.
Well, and I've heard stories where intentionally voters will swarm at
Right.
certain times when they know it's busy. So like, certain party will swarm and just to take
Cause
advantage of
confusion.
that fact, to
Okay.
kind of overwhelm the workers on purpose, so maybe they don't catch something. So when that was pointed out to me, I thought, wow, that was like a little antenna going up. I'm
Right,
not
you need to be
sure.
aware of this, that
Right,
this might
right.
happen. Don't let yourself be
Get
rushed
frazzled,
into
right,
or do stuff or not do stuff that you should be doing,
right.
okay?
It's at those times I think it's even more important to not move slower, but at least move at a pace at which you're comfortable and you understand what's going on. And if they start to, get agitated, you always have the St. Louis County Police Department on your side, so.
The other thing is, you might notice that something is not right. I just talked to a lady yesterday. It's the same thing we talked about earlier. She pointed it out. Well, this isn't right. This isn't what I was taught in training class. Why are we doing this? And the supervisor ignores it. The supervisor says, don't worry about it. This is the way we've always done it. It's no big deal. You cannot just go back to your seat and say, oh, forget about it. No, you need to fix it. Tell the next roving deputy that comes in about this. They can call the Board of Election. Or if nobody helps you, call the Board of Election yourself and say, I don't think this is right and we're doing this. And before you do anything, review the rules, the law in the book. They have them in each polling place, okay?
There are two supervisors, so you can go to the other party supervisor around that. I'm sure
Right,
they're-
make sure the issue that you think is questionable is addressed.
Most of you have your own cell phones in the polling place. Take it upon yourself when you get there in the morning to know the contact number of the Board of Elections and call. I would call.
It's in your books.
Yeah.
Is it easy to get through?
Uh,
Well,
In 2010, nobody could get through.
yeah.
But some supervisors got smart and used their own cell phones, and lo and behold, they got through on their own cell phones. So I questioned, well, that doesn't sound right. How does this work? So, you just need to be able to work around things. But don't do things wrong just because there's not enough time, something doesn't work. Insist on it. Yes, sir.
Got a curiosity question. Living in St. Charles County, a week or so before the election, I always get this postcard in the mail, identified. When I take that in, I hand it in, automatically find everything else. Is that different in other places? Seem like that pretty well takes care of it. They sent you the thing, you are registered, they identify your card, hand it back to them, and there's almost no question or so,
That's,
except for you sign yourself and stuff.
well, it's
but,
not really
Is that different in
unacceptable.
other places? Because that almost pre-identifies you,
Yeah,
you received it in the
I
mail.
was getting ready to say, that's not, and it even states on that card that it's not supposed to be used as identification at the polling place. That's just our notice to you that there is an
I always
election.
hand it to them, and then they find
Right.
it.
Well,
But
they
they're
should
not
ask you for
supposed to.
for the
Right.
identification
The
that
other
is in the books.
Right.
In St.
Yeah.
Charles,
I've always
No,
just handed it to them. and-
It actually says on the card, next time you get it, look, because it shows
The Board of Election.
on the, not your voter registration card, that is valid, you can use that, but I'm talking
It's
about
not an
our
identi-
little
it's not an
notice that we
approved
send out a week
proof
ahead of
identification.
time. It says on that now, that is not supposed to be used as a form of identification at the polling place.
Oh, okay, because I thought that's automatically they pretty
Well,
well.
no, but in the past, a lot of people have done that, but, I had, I noticed that a lot of times there's the same, workers that vote in, or the same workers that work in the same polling places time after time. You get to learn and know your voters if you work every election, and those ones that vote every election. And they're from your neighborhood if you are working your neighborhood. So a lot of times, it's not a problem because both party, supervisors know, which is, if they didn't have the identification, you're supposed to vote by affidavit with the two supervisors.
Otherwise, they're supposed to have to show identification.
Yes.
It never happened.
Well,
Wow.
it's not an official
I've never been asked, I
form.
thought, well, that card gets me
Right.
in.
I know.
It's not an official form of identification.
Oh, I'm sure, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this book in your handout. There's a number you can call to get one of these, okay? This is the latest version. They just republished this. It gets updated quite often. We're gonna talk about electronic versus OptiScan. And what you can do as a poll worker to make sure things are run correctly. This is really, and it's more for the roving deputies. There's always stories circulating right before the election about the voting machines. But let's just talk a minute of how the machines actually work. The machines are not programmed centrally for all machines at the same time. Each machine is programmed individually. And each machine is checked to make sure when they open the polls, that's one of the functions of the supervisor, to have the proper data on it, the polling location, and that it's zero. There's no vote in this machine.
Did you say supervisor? Okay, that's good, because I've never been told.
The assistant supervisor.
It's just whoever is assigned, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
whoever is assigned to check the machines. I should have said that. You need to make sure that the count is zero on that machine. And whoever runs the machines needs to make sure throughout the day that the votes are evenly distributed. Because that's another way you can figure out, you can sort of determine if every machine has 20 votes on it and one of them has 80, and they're trying to distribute the voters to each machine equally, how come this one is 80?
That's a good point, because they didn't bring that up in class.
Right,
Actually, that's a good way
to check things.
to check things, is kind of rotate your.
And I, as a roving deputy, I have now started, when I go in the polling place, I look at the sequence number, I check all the numbers at each machine, including the OptiScan, and make sure it adds up to the sequence number. Okay? So I can tell if there's a problem with the machine. Yes, ma'am.
Now, they told us to try to stagger the electronic machines so they're not running out of paper at the same time.
Right,
So you would kind of hit one a little more heavy, wouldn't you? Or are you going to just try to have one?
No, that's what we mean by staggering, is that you're rotating, you know, when you.
But I don't want to
because
go, all three of them need paper after this next one.
Possibly.
That's a possibility.
So just shut them all down, though, and you change the
Well,
paper
Well, no,
now.
you'll just do one.
One at a time.
Okay.
That's another thing I'm doing as a roving deputy. When the count is above 60, between 60 and 65, I tell them, I think you need to change the paper now, because it usually runs out by around 70.
That's one of the reasons they push.
Well, yeah, this ballot is gonna be really.
It might not, it might only be 50.
Yeah,
they
no,
told us.
we're gonna have a bunch of propositions.
Yeah.
So this ballot's gonna be rather long, so for each voter who is voting and recording that is gonna take more tape. So, yeah, it is after a certain number of votes, it's gonna run out. These are just, when you've worked it so long, you kind of know these things. So.
Yeah, but people need to be reminded that they need to check that the paper roll is still running. And when it hits a certain spot or a certain number, make sure you replace the paper roll. Okay? Yes?
And I think the paper's kind of tricky, so if it's your first time, I would highly recommend going back to the refresher class that they're doing and
Right.
do it a bunch of times. Because it's,
The class,
looking
75?
at the paper on those machines is a little tricky.
I think it is,
It
if you have
can be.
people upset,
Yeah.
having to vote.
Yes, Adam.
They've also invested in some, it was very new to just this last election, and it's a really big, bound up binder, colored pictures of everything that you need to do. So I had to open up that a couple times, because my supervisor had no idea what the heck he was doing, because he's never done it before. So if you open up, it's just this big binder, colored pictures of everything you have to do for supervisors, poll workers, descriptions of how to use the machines, the OptiScan, how to set breakdown of everything. So yeah, if you look at that thing, it tells you very detailed how to do it.
Yes.
I have a question. If you're working a job site, you're checking people in, can you just get up and look at the machines and make sure the numbers?
That's the
are
one thing
same?
I do not know. Can I, as a poll worker, go and check the machines?
Sure you can. Why not?
Should
If
be
you
able-
have a
you're in-
lull, if you have a lull,
You just
you
want
can
to check
get
it
up
out,
and
just
walk
go and check
around,
it.
and you can go and look, you know, as long as the voter's not there in the machine. But, you can go and look at that machine, you can even touch it to see what the count is. or whatever.
Right. It hits the screen and the count shows up.
Okay.
But if you vote electronic, make sure, there's a paper tape on the side. Make sure you watch the paper tape, that it records what you voted. and what count you're at. You can check that yourself. A lot of people say, what? I didn't know that. Well, it's right there.
So
Check.
if it's, because I've seen it like advance, it's like
Yes.
rolling up.
Right,
As long as it's doing that, then it is
It should
counting
be.
your vote.
yes, and
Well,
the paper
it's
is,
counting your vote because it's doing it
But
electronically.
in order to have that backup,
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So just pay attention. I know a lot of good voters. I classify my voters because I have, well, no, let me tell you, I've been doing this since I was 18 years old, okay? And I am 51. So
I thought you were 19 now.
So I have what I call my fair weather voters. They're my ones that only come out for the presidential election. That's the only time I ever see them. And then I have my voters who are diligent and they vote every election. Every time we have an election, they're out there to vote. Very rarely do they ever miss, okay? So that's why I say I have my fair weather voters and I have my other ones. And then in St. Louis County and St. Louis City, we have a lot of transients. They move. In between those 4 years, they've moved once, maybe twice, sometimes 3 times, you know? So, you have, oh, no, I haven't lived there in, 3 years or whatever. When they come in and we're trying to find them and they're not in our binder, and we have to go back to our Palm Pilot to find them. And so that's, but another thing with the tape is I do believe when it starts running out, doesn't it start giving the color?
No, not anymore, they said, it was, or they said our training, they said it's all white the whole time. It's a thicker paper now or something. But that's why I was wondering, how are we supposed to, is there a way on the machine, you said, every time I activate it, will it tell me this is your
Yeah.
50th voter, that I'll be going,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
it's getting close to 100
Right,
voters
yeah.
here, so you can
That's,
kind of.
yeah, when you touch and you, bring up the screen, it tells you the count at the
Okay.
bottom. So kind of pay attention to that. Okay.
You just can't let it run up to 70,
Right,
right?
yeah.
We have
Because
to
then
change
it
it
definitely-
before 70,
Oh,
Yeah,
right?
they told us.
And with this ballot, probably even less than that,
Oh,
because
that's
it's
a
a big
good-
ballot.
This is a good point, okay? He said, if a person's moved, okay, the person always has to be in their proper polling place for the address that they reside in.
Oh,
Just because someone has been in that book, and I know sometimes people do this, they would have moved and they didn't re-register to vote or change their address, and they just go back and they know they're in the other, and they do that. We have no control. We can't, if a person comes in, their driver's license or whatever form of identification says that they still have that address, we can't do that. But if a person comes into your polling place and they're not in your precinct binder, and you pull them up and they are registered to vote in another location, they have to go to that location in order to cast a ballot. They cannot vote in your polling place if the address they reside in is supposed to vote in another.
If they insist,
Right. Well, then they can vote for provisional ballot, but it's not gonna be counted. Even in a provisional ballot, you have to go in the proper polling place that you should be registered in.
Don't you get to vote one election like you move into your own place? I thought that if you've moved recently, that for the first election, if it's within a certain number of days, you vote at your own place.
I have not heard that.
I have not heard that either. You're always supposed to, wherever you physically reside, the polling place that takes and votes that location that you physically reside in.
Now, there are
That's what it
people
means.
that will insist that I want to vote here. I'm not going to go to the other place. You can give them a provisional ballot. They cannot
Right.
vote that day. They can fill out a provisional ballot, which will be counted later if it's found that they are registered to vote.
Actually, they told us not to offer provisional ballot. only-
Yeah, I know, but some people are obstinate and they insist on voting.
No, they people can be able to do that.
Huh?
People are never even on I don't know.
Yes, Cindy?
Okay,
Oxford.
does the Palm Pilot tell where they're supposed to be voting?
It does have their township and precinct. Yeah,
Right.
on the palm.
Does it have where the place is?
No, not on that. That's when you have to pull out your, big binder book where we have all of the precincts where they vote.
Okay, so, okay, I didn't know that was there.
They actually,
Yeah, like if I put my number, it'll tell me Parkway, whatever. It'll tell me, it won't tell me the address of Parkway, but it'll tell me what the.
oh, okay, so it does say that?
Yeah.
I thought it just. It just.
It has your township, your precinct, post office, and your zip code.
Okay.
Why does it have the post office?
Well, you're.
Anyway, let's move on. Any more questions on electronic voting? Yes?
Well, it's just, I guess I'm going back. It says the reasons for voting by affidavit, the first one is name not precinct roster, Tom Pellet, or supplemental precinct roster. I thought that was the reason for voting provisionally. The reason for voting by provisional
Oh.
ballot.
Affidavit
And
and different.
Right, so
And
why,
that was a mistake I made.
but it looks like the same reason for voting provisional is the reason for voting by affidavit. If they don't have their name in any of those things, isn't that provisional?
But at the point at which they're not increasing by the palm table, the palm table, you look them up with the palm pilot, and they're not in the palm pilot, then you call for what,
Yeah, I
the
know.
board what says,
You
yes, they can vote, then yes, then you go on the affidavit form.
And you do, then they say, yes, you can vote.
Yeah, and you
vote
can,
by
you can
affidavit.
see on the affidavit form here, you can, the checkbox may not increase in the, palm
So the
pilot.
only reason, so that's what I'm talking, when do I default to provisional? Is if I call the Board of Elections and they say this is provisional. They'll find it. Okay.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? So are you saying the only time they vote provisional is if you call the Board of Elections?
well, you would have gone to that process, okay? If the person's not in your precinct binder, you know that they're gonna have to vote by affidavit. Okay, if they're gonna be, allowed to vote, they're gonna vote by affidavit. Okay, then it takes you through the different steps on here, the reason why they're voting by affidavit. And afterwards, it tells you, you know, if you do find the voter in the Palm Pilot, you don't call the election board. That's your verification. The Palm Pilot is the same thing that the election board has. And it's saying, yeah, they're supposed to be voting, you know, they're registered to vote. Maybe they need an address change, a name change, whatever the case may be. Okay, then there are times when you actually have to call the election board. You can't find them in the Palm Pilot. So you do need to call the election board. When they give you the okay, you're writing down who it was you spoke with down there. That's the authorization for you guys that, yeah, they're allowing us to just vote them. Also, it would say, when you talk to that person and they say, we don't find them anywhere, but if they insist, give them a provisional ballot. They're gonna let you know. Yeah, we don't just automatically, you know, do that.
This shows an option for touchscreen in here, I thought we.
Well, you can do a touchscreen, okay, if you're cleared to vote,
Okay.
okay,
Oh, yeah, this is just an example, you
Right.
could check the touchscreen box with them.
right, exactly.
But they're not allowed to go use the touchscreen at that time.
Well, no, no,
We don't have
for
provisional.
provisional ballot, they're never allowed to use the touchscreen. You have to issue that special provisional ballot because there's, only the federal, offices that they're allowed to vote on. They don't vote on the down, roller.
And then they only
places.
count those after they,
Right.
After they go through the process. Right. This is just for, you do have a choice, someone who votes by affidavit, and we do determine if they are allowed to vote, then they can choose whether they want to touchscreen or OptiScan.
Let's talk a few moments about the OptiScan printer. The voter completes a paper ballot. They should complete the ballot as instructed, make sure you fill in the little bubbles.